Okay, so just as a quick reminder, all these things that we discussed before lunch, interest, tip, discount, sales tax, are actually things that are added to or subtracted from a base amount. So they're added to or subtracted from a base amount based off what they are. Tip is typically added to whatever the base amount is, like in a restaurant, for example, it's your bill, and then you determine the tip based off of the amount of the bill. Cameron?
They all voted.
Brendan, why are you raising your voice when I'm talking to you? You are freaking 11, and you start acting like it.
Okay.
Sit down. Come on now. Thank you. Okay?
Oh, not Jason.
I don't know if you're aware, but you don't get to vote in a class that's led by someone with a degree. Got it?
That's a dictatorship.
It's actually called an absolute monarchy, if you want to do it.
You're not a king.
I am absolutely.
I
I stopped forcing children to genius left.
No, you're not a king.
You are so loud. No.
You're still
So,
going to be the next
okay, why did you raise your hand and then I chose to not? No, because he now needs to ignore you because, you know, you're a child. So here we go. I am. So here we go. A discount is typically subtracted from an amount. A discount is subtracted from an amount. Okay? So, sales tax, added to or subtracted from? It is added to the amount that you're paying for. And by the way, there are some items that are taxable and some items that are not. But we're going to basically assume that if it's actually a sales tax question, that they're all taxable. But there are certain food items, just so you know, in real life that are not taxable. If you go and buy a bottle of water for 99 cents, you'll pay 99 cents. If you go and buy a gallon of milk for $2.49, you will pay $2.49. Okay? So,
What about like vegetables?
yeah, what are considered staple foods, foods that are necessary, are not taxable. That's the way it works. Okay? So interest is the one, when we were talking before, interest is the one that's kind of, it can be either. If it's bank interest, it could be added to the amount that you have in the bank. If it's a bill, right, it's added to, but as far as whether you look at it as an expense or an asset, it kind of depends on what your perspective is. Andrew, should have that out. Thank you. All right, so any questions on this? There is one thing that they all have in common. Does anybody know what they all have in common? That's part of it. That's right. They are calculated based off of something called percent. They are calculated based off of something called percent. And percent is really an extension of our proportions unit. That's what we're going to talk about today. Alex?
Oh, sometimes tips aren't percents, they're just to make it easier to pay.
Yeah, they are. Sometimes they use like the percent as a baseline and then they adjust it just a little bit. I can tell you, like, I'm someone who doesn't like cents. Like if I'm putting gas in my car, I will make it stop at an even number, like 25 or 40, or I don't like cents. In fact, if I accidentally click over to like $40.01, I will then go to $41. It just drives me nuts. And the same thing with my restaurant bill. If I'm figuring out tax, say I get my restaurant bill and it's like $48.12, and I decide based off of 15% of that, 6, 7, which is about $7-ish. $7 is about, yeah, well, 15% is 7, will be 481 plus 240, which is $7.21. It's about 15%. So instead of doing $7.21, I will do $7.88, so that when I pay, it's $56. Just because I like even numbers. Yes?
Like my mom, whenever she like gives tips, if the person did it like, okay, so put like 20% on there, which is like $5, like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so anyway, but basically they're determined based off of percents. And so what we're going to talk about today is how to calculate percentages. Do you need something or do you just contribute? Yeah, so let's just keep going. So They're based off of percent. What a percent is, a percent compares part of a quantity to a whole quantity. Percents are a natural ratio. Percents are a natural ratio. Now, if you know what this word, this root word means, then you already know what percent means. It is. Cent means 100. And it's evident by the fact that how many years are there in a century? 100. How many cents are there in a dollar? 100. Right? So the word percent actually breaks down to out of 100. The word percent means out of 100. 32%. 32% is actually 32 hundredths. 32% is actually 32 hundredths, or you could even write it as 32 hundredths. Okay? Different ways of writing the exact same quantity, the exact same amount. Alex?
The percent sign has two circles and one line, and 100 has two circles.
That's true. That's true. So you see the percent sign, what it has, this percent sign looks like this. So it's another way to remember 100, because there are two circles that look, match 0 to 100.
Right, you're old enough that you can just know out of 100 because you should be old enough to know.
There are 4 basic ratios used in percent proportions. And 2 you see down here, part over base, and you can set it equal to percent over 100. The percent always goes above 100. The minute you see a number with a percent sign after it, you already know one side of your proportion. It's that number over 100, automatically. It's that number over 100, automatically. Now, there are other ways to think about how this works. One is part over base. One is something we call is over of. Is over of. Natai? We'll talk about that in a second. That's kind of your choice thing. One is over of. Another one that some kids like to use is the amount of change. And by change, it's not like change like coin change, but the amount that something changes over the original amount. Over the original amount. These are all different ratios that can be put together next to one another to create our proportion. You could put this equal to this. You could put this equal to this. It doesn't really matter as long as you set your proportion. Remember, our proportions always look the same. It's a line and a line. And how many parts are there to a proportion? There are 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The great thing about percent proportions is there are really only 3 because you know one of them has to be 100. You know one of them has to have 100 in the base. That's why I think percent proportions are pretty easy. Now, the tricky part is making sure that you understand, just like with any other proportion, how you set it up is everything. How you set it up is very, very, very important. So let's talk about percent proportions. The way percent proportions works, remember one of our things was is over of, right? Is over of was one of our example ratios. And if it asks you what percent of $15 is $9, they're giving you a base proportion. What percent of $15 is $9? So once you see that, guys, I want you to set up the proportion right off the bat. First thing I want you to do is set up your proportion. So here, I need you to not yell out, I need you to wait. Okay? So we set up our proportion. Now we need to start putting things together. I will tell you, the very first thing I look for is either the word percent or the symbol for percent, right off the bat. Because I know that one of my setups is this guy. And what always goes above the 100? The percent.
You don't know the percent.
But it says what percent? So that's my variable. My variable has to be the one that goes above 100. So now I just need to figure out the other side. The number after the of is always your base. Is over of 9 And now we're ready to go. Alex? Don't solve it. Okay? Now, is anybody not sure how we got here? Is anybody not sure how we got here? Okay? So, now we can go through our problem solving, right? Can we simplify? Can we go from 50 to 100 accurately?
No.
Yes.
No, not easily.
Well, 6 2/3.
15 times, okay, but again, I'm looking for an easy thing.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Because 9 is divisible by 3, so that is kind of easy.
Okay, if you see it, that's perfectly fine.
Okay.
But I want to make sure that everyone can walk through it, everyone has the tools necessary to solve. Okay? I will tell you this, if I divide it by 3, I would end up with 3 over 5, which for me is way easier.
20.
Exactly right, because now my scale factor is 20, which means it is 60%, which means it is 60%. Okay? Any questions on how I arrived at that? Any questions? Okay. Set that one up. Set it up first before you solve it. When I'm grading, I will absolutely grade the proportion before I will grade the final answer. Okay, so basically every question has 2 parts. Every question has 2 parts. Use those 5 ratios I gave you as kind of examples. That for me is the easiest one because I found my percent sign first. So then, yeah.
But that's supposed to be at the bottom.
Because of is at the bottom. And by the way, just so we're clear, would it matter if I have 30 over 100 on the left-hand side and x over 150 on the right? It would not, because the cross multiplications match. Okay? Oh, Jackson, you're doing that thing, son. Lay it back. Okay? So, some of you know an easy way to get from 100 to 150 in your head from a scale factor standpoint. Remember, you can go left to right or right to left, it doesn't matter. If you don't, anything that ends in 0 is divisible by 10. Now, it's a much easier scale factor process, which means x equals 45. X equals 45. Which, by the way, means that 45 is 30% of 150. 45 is 30% of 150. Any questions? Do a couple more, then we'll get on to what we're doing. Set it up. 12 is 80% of what number? 12 is 80% of what number?
So you can simplify.
You absolutely can. That was my simplification, which makes it very easy because now I can simply scale it.
Yes, how can you win? I didn't say find all the way down. I just went to 8.
Yeah, and you could go to 8/10. I went to 4/5 just because it's a cleaner scale factor, right? But again, you'll find it doesn't matter. By the way, even if you got down to it, for some reason you missed the scale factor, all you didn't have to do is cross multiply. What's 12 times 5? 60 divided by 4 is 15. So you can still cross multiply, to solve that proportion. Okay? Any questions on all of this so far? Okay, a couple things I want to kind of cover before we get into it. Try the second one for me. 80 is 75% of what number? 80 is 75% of what number? Once you get that solved, go ahead and get your setup for the first one. Those should be your two setups. We're using that is over up in quite a bit. And letting that percent number lock in one side. Sure, go ahead.
But you said only do the second.
I said set up the first one. And you can go ahead and solve it if you want to. Oh, wow.
It's 70% of what number?
You're so right. Hold.
I was like, dude,
I think you just switched them actually.
I did. I just did the brain thing.
4.
Wait, 5, 4.
4 is 6. Yes, 3 4.
Wait, 5. Wait, we're not going first. Hold.
It's 3/4.
Hold.
3/4.
Done.
Oh my god.
Oh, 25. Oh! 75.
I don't want to go to 3/4 because 3 doesn't go into 80. I was trying
So
to
you can
find,
cross multiplication.
I understand that. I was looking for a way to go down to a scale that gets me where I want to go.
It's 3/4. 5 by 20.
Okay, I am aware of it being 3/4. But if I go to 3/4, I can't put a scale factor in place. So what my point was, just give me a second. Let me see if I can figure it out.
You could do 20. You could do 5 over 20. There's 5 is 20.
It's not 5.
That is. That's 1/4. Give me 15 over. And that is
Yeah, that's something to go in.
15 over 20.
yeah, 15. I'm going to 80.
Yeah, I got 326.
That's just simple. Oh my. You could do. Yeah, you could multiply it by.
Can we just use the calculator?
You could multiply it by shut up.
Absolutely not.
You can do it by 5 and 2. 5 and 1/3.
Okay, we're doing go 3/4.
Now you're doing it all that time.
Yeah, I just cross multiplied.
So you get 320 divided by 3.
Yeah, I got 106 and 2/3.
3, which is 1, 0, 6, and 2/3. 106.
Yes, that's what I do.
Yeah, oh my God. So everyone gets half.
Oh, yeah.
Now, here's something. I want y'all to watch this one, because this one actually works kind of easier. Does anybody know how to divide? What is, oh,
What is division, guys?
what is 18 divided by 10, Cameron? No pencils. What is 18 divided by 10?
So easy. 1.8.
Is 1.8.
I feel like a question.
Oh, yeah.
When you divide by a number,
Let's move the decimal.
so we have a base 10 number system. So when you divide by 100, you simply move the decimal twice. The reason I show you that is on this one. If I see this, and I see an easy way for me to multiply those, I'm not going to simplify it and get away from dividing by 100, because dividing by 100 is a good thing. Because 60 times 5 is 300. 300 divided by 100 is
3. Yes,
3.
I like that. Woohoo!
So there are times, no, and you can do that, Andrew. What I'm getting at, though, before you instantly jump into simplifying, before you start looking at the cross simplification,
What is kind of
start making a decision as to whether or not it might be easier just to go ahead and cross simplify and divide by 100, because cross simplify and divide by 100 is a very easy thing to do once you understand how our number system works. Okay? Let's try an application. Setup number 1. There are 8 boys and 20 girls in the classroom. What percent of the students are girls? If there are 8 boys and 20 girls in the classroom, what percent of the students are girls? And this is where you might want to refer back to those 5 example ratios I gave you earlier. Not all of them are going to fit into that is over a template.
I already.
Okay, just hold and let everyone else get it.
Are we allowed to?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Set it up and then solve it.
Good.
That should be your setup.
It's not 28. Oh, 28. Where do you 28?
I use total, which is what you should have used too.
Oh.
Because if I'm finding out what percent are girls, I'm using part over whole or total, and I'm setting it equal to x over percent. There are 28 total students, and 20 of them are girls.
For some reason I did boys and boys.
I understand, but guys, you need to think through the setup. Tara?
Can you do the second one or just the first one?
Let's just finish this one. So, now this is one of those things where I'm going to go ahead and check my cross multiplication. It's not going to do me any good to go ahead and do it as is, so I know I can simplify. 20 over 28, they're both divisible by 4, so this becomes 5 over 7. Right? I still can't use the scale factor, so now I do my cross multiplication. So I end up with 500 divided by 7, which gives me 7. That's 49. We'll set 49 and wrote something else. 49, subtract, I get 1. I drop down my 0. That's 1. That's 7. That's 3. 71 and 3/7. 71 and 3/7%. 71 3/7%, which is why we slow down and think through and we don't race through. Okay? Go ahead and set the second one up. Set the second one up, please. I completed 22 questions on an exam, was told by the teacher that I completed 40% of the test. How many questions are on that test for that exam? I have completed 22 questions and was told that that represents 40% of the test. Remember, your setup comes first, and before you set up or as you set up, you need to think through those proportions. Think through those proportions. Now, so I've got a couple things that I'm working with. One is the 22 questions, one is 40%. 40% helps me out because I instantly set up 40 over 100 as one side of my proportion. Now, something I want you to kind of pay attention to is this. These two things represent the same things. And these two items represent the same things. They always will. 40% is 40 out of 100, part over whole. So this top represents the part, and this represents the total or the whole. Now, if you look at the question, it says how many questions are on the exam. So which part am I going to need to find? Top or bottom? This is what I'm looking for, the total number of questions. Which was 22 here, and now I can go ahead and jump in. Yeah. Infinite is divisible, then that ends in a 0, can simplify like this. Then I'm going to simplify it again to 2/5. Then I can use scale factor times 11 times 11, and x equals 55 questions total.
I did it the wrong way, but still got it right.
Okay. Now you probably may have done it the right way, just a different way.
No, like I put.
Okay. Now here's an interesting thing. What if I had asked you?
I did 20. You didn't do it.
Here's what we're gonna do. I have a class worksheet that's only 4 questions. Okay. I have a class worksheet that's only 4 questions, and I'm gonna put answer keys out. So once you do the form, you're gonna walk up, check them against the answer keys. If you're right, you can throw away the warm-up and pick up the homework, which will be over on the desk next to mine. Okay? If they're not right, you need to really look at the how and figure out why it is that you missed it. Because the homework is a pretty healthy amount of homework. No, I want you to do all 4 questions. Yeah, it's only 4 questions on the class, so I want you to do all 4 before you check it.